to another up close video. Today's one is for Tonic Showcase number 34, which is the Buzzing Beehive House, and it's a really cool die set that creates this gorgeous beehive kind of design that actually has 3 separate layers. So each of these different sort of tapered pieces is actually a separate little box, and then you have the roof, which is the lid for the box as well. I've really enjoyed playing with this one. I have only made one 3-dimensional one, which past me will show you later, and I actually turned it into a windmill because you can actually use one of these panels here to create a windmill sort of sail for it as well, which I thought was quite a different kind of idea that you might not have thought of just looking at it straight away. I'm not really sure what sparked it in my mind, but it was between a lighthouse and a windmill that I wanted to try, so I went for the windmill in the end. I've also got a printout of the packaging here, so yours will look a lot more professional than this. This is just a printed version, but I wanted to be able to show you what the boxes actually look like, and you can create the gorgeous 3-tiered beehive, or you can skip off the bottom tier and create it a little 2-tiered little house, or it could be a 2-tiered beehive as well. You can do whichever you want to, or you can make a 3-tiered house, and the windows and the door came in very handy for decorating my windmill as well, and if you had turned it into a lighthouse, they would come in handy for that too. And because it's a house, you also get the chimney, which is really lovely. You also get the tiny little bee die in the set as well, which I'll show you. And they've actually given you a separate little die that you can cut from a different colour to put behind them, which I think is so lovely because it saves you having to fussy cut out that little piece. And also on the packaging, you've got all of the back of it showing you all of the dies that are included in the set. So if you ever lose one or misplace a die, you can find out where it came from. And on the inside of your packaging, you've got all of the instructions, and although this is, you know, a decent sort of sized gift box, and you would think that you would need to cut 4 sides for each layer, the way they have created this box, they've got this like locking mechanism, or just like stability kind of mechanism of these little sort of straps that go down the side of it. The way they've done that, it actually only requires you to cut 2 of pretty much every single panel. There's like a few pieces that you would need to cut 4 of, but the majority of the die cutting is only having to cut 2 of each panel, which I'm sure you know is absolutely fantastic when you're die cutting. For decoration, you might have to cut 4 of some panels, but for all of the base kind of pieces, you definitely only really need 2 of each panel. And it does tell you only to do 1 of each base, but I actually did 2 of each base just to make it even stronger and allow you to support a slightly heavier gift inside each box as well if you want, you know, depending on what you're giving in there. The only kind of things you would need to cut 4 of are the little feet that give you like a little raised up base, and also the little side straps that give you that kind of stability mechanism as well. But the rest of it, because it's not square, and because they've done this slot mechanism in the side, you only really need 2 of each of everything, which is really lovely. So if you have an A4 machine like your Tangerine and you tape everything down carefully, you technically could get pretty much everything cut just with a couple of passes through your machine. So it's a fantastic one, maybe for batch making and stuff, if you like to sell your gift boxes, or if you want to make lots of them for gifts for Christmas or birthdays or something as well. So yeah, it's really easy to put together. You're basically cutting your base pieces and then just sticking the 4 side panels onto them, and then, you know, bringing up the sides and sticking the corners together. Or the way I like to do it is I stick all of the pieces together in like, you know, an actual sort of ring kind of shape, obviously with the corners on, so it's not really a ring, but you have them all put together, and then you slide the base in, and then you put another one on the bottom to sandwich those glue tabs between. That's how I like to put them together. But yeah, it's a really, really simple box. So let's have a look at this first. You can see here we've got a nesting set of little rectangles here, and these are the different size boxes. So these are the bases. So the largest one gives you the base for the bottom layer, the middle sized one is for the middle layer, and the smallest one is for the smallest layer. So when you're deciding, you know, whether you're doing a 2-tier or a 3-tier, or maybe even just a 1-tier as well, maybe you're making a bungalow house, you've got the different bases there for that. But also, just for your card making, you can have lovely little mats and layers for a focal image. Maybe you've stamped something on the smallest one and you want some mats and layers, which is lovely. you might see there's another rectangle over here. This one actually has a score line down the middle, and this is the roof of your house. I did actually cut 2 roofs for mine, because I cut one from white card, which I secured, you know, securely onto the glue tabs of the little apex of the roof, and then I also cut one from some pearlescent card, and then I kind of like tweaked it so it sort of lifted up a little bit, just to give it a little bit of extra movement and dimension, but you'll see that later on when I show you the windmill that I created. And then you can see on the die set how you have the various different sizes. So these are in the reverse order. So this is the smallest, medium, largest, largest, medium, smallest. So they fit better on the magnetic sheet. But you can see how you have the side that has the slit in and the side that doesn't have the slit in. Then for the middle layer, you have 2 slits, because you're going to want to be able to, this is where you would glue those little tabs that you get. And then the larger slit that's in here is where they would thread into. So for the middle layer, you need both, so that you can put another one to lock into the bottom layer, but you've also got the ability to slot the top one into the next layer. And you've got the plain side as well. And then for the largest one, you don't have the skinny slot, you just have the slightly wider slot, because you're just going to be placing that tab that you've stuck in this slot here into this one. And then you've also got the plain side piece, which is what I use to create my sails for my windmill as well. And then you've got all of these gorgeous panels. So the top tier actually has like a random hexagonal pattern to it. If I hold this up, you can see how there's just some of like the honeycomb kind of pattern in there, and same with the smallest one over here as well. Then the middle sort of layer of the beehive, you've actually got this kind of like cut in detail of the bees. The wings will actually stay in the card, the body will fall out of the card, so you can like prise the little wings up and have them 3-dimensional. And then you've got the little pierced kind of bee trails behind them as well. And then the same for the one that has the 2 slits in. So this is why it's a funny shape compared to the other ones, so that you can still access those 2 slits on there as well. If you were changing this to be, you know, to not have the 3rd layer, so you wouldn't need this extra slit here, you could definitely modify this panel to go over here if you wanted to, or you could just create something as part of your decoration that would just cover these on the 2 opposite sides that they would be on as well, so you wouldn't have to sort of see this portion of the design. You could cover that with something to sort of maybe not the bees, actually, they're not quite big enough, but you might be able to put like this little scalloped border on there or something, just to disguise the fact that you're not using that bottom piece. Or actually, with the house, you have a tiny little picket fence. You could even, you know, use the picket fence to disguise that as well, depending what you're doing really, because you might not even want to have the bee design or even the specific shaped side panels if you're creating a house as well. So it's kind of up to you really. And then for the bottom layer, you have an overall honeycomb pattern. So you've got this gorgeous one here, and then you've also got the complete pattern there, which I actually used on the sails, because I used this one to create the sails for my windmill as well, and I quite liked that kind of design that it gave to it. So those are all of the panels. Then you also have a bunch of these little pieces here, which you're kind of looking at thinking, why do we need so many of the same piece? But they are all different lengths. Even if they might look the same length, some of them, they are all slightly different lengths. And then this one doesn't have a glue tab on either side, because this one actually is part of the roof. So to create the roof for your beehive, let me just get a magnet so I can pick it up easily. You're actually using these 2 pieces in conjunction with this piece. So instead of having the large side panels to create the side panels for the roof, you're actually using 2 of these and 2 of these, because you can see this apex of the roof has 2 glue tabs, which is what you use to attach to these ones. And then you'll have this glue tab and these glue tabs on the apex that you use to stick it to the roof as well. And the roof is longer than the actual like length of the house, you can see here, so you can actually overlap it to whatever degree you want to. On mine, I pushed it back in further this way, so it overhung more at the back, so that I could fit my sails on the front. But you can definitely play around with, maybe you want, if you're doing the house, maybe you want a large overhang at the front and create some kind of porch for the house as well, and then have it more flush at the back. So you can play around with how you want this roof to kind of sit as well. But those are all the pieces to create the roof. Then let's go back to these pieces that I was talking about before. So these 2 in particular look very similar in size, but you can see this one is just slightly longer. So when you're picking all of your pieces to create the the beehive, the way these pieces work, it does explain all of this in the instructions, but the way these pieces work is they are actually going to be stuck onto the bottom of the top tier and the bottom of the middle tier, and these, along with this little tab system with those slits, is what keeps the whole three-tiered box kind of together. This sort of gives like an extra lip to sort of sit over this top portion of each of the side pieces. They have like a raised up, straight up piece, and this kind of sits over the top like a lid. So they go together really nicely, and that's what all these pieces are for, and it is pretty easy to figure out which ones are which. So you've got two that will go with the on the bottom of the middle layer and two that will go on the bottom of the top layer, and to figure out which ones, you literally just pick up the die and then go over to the base piece, so you're looking at where it's kind of tapered out more towards the bottom, and then you can just place this up against it and go, oh, that one is the exact length of that, so that must go with that side. And then maybe you pick up this one, but you want to do it for the other side of the small tier at the top, and then you're kind of like, oh, this one is far too long, that's not going to fit on there. So then you can go back and be like, okay, maybe it's this one then, and yes, that one is the perfect length for that. So actually I can tell you it is the two that differ that much, like this. So the smallest one plus the next one that differs in that kind of amount, that is for the bottom of the smallest tier. And then the largest one plus the one that differs by the same amount really, because they are the same sort of rectangle, are the ones that go on the bottom of the middle tier. So the biggest one plus the one that coordinates go on the bottom of the middle tier, and the smallest one plus the one that coordinates go on the bottom of the smallest tier. Okay, then let's move on to the little chimney. So we actually have the dies to create this little chimney. If you're turning it into a house, or I did use it on my windmill as well, you can actually create this little chimney piece, and you've got this portion which actually completely folds up. This ends up being a glue tab that sticks over here, and then these two little glue tabs that have got the score line on just there, they end up sticking to this little rectangle, and then you use this rectangle to stick it to the house, and you'll see that on my windmill later. Then, to make it into the actual house, as well as having that chimney, you also have your little front door. And if you have any of the other sets that have come out recently with little doors and windows and bits and pieces on them from Stamp Clubs or Designer's Choices and stuff like that, you can obviously mix and match all of those together. But that's the little door that you get in this set. And you also get the little window. So cute little square window that works really nicely on wherever you want to put it on these. You can do them uniformly, you can do them completely randomly. It looks lovely wherever you decide to put it. And I didn't use them on mine in the end, but you do actually get the windowsills. So you can actually give them a little windowsill. Maybe you want to give them a little flower box. You've actually got some tiny little flowers in here as well that you can use to create some gorgeous little floral elements to decorate the house or to decorate the beehive as well. So you've got all of those different flowers, a lovely selection of different kind of types of flowers, slightly different sizes of flowers as well. Some of these smaller ones are really simple to do. You literally just die cut them and then like put them onto your foam mat and then poke in the centre of them with one of your smaller ball tools, and they just get that little cupped shape, and then you can stick them on with a little bit of glue and they work really nicely. And you also have the little leaf on there as well. Then, also for the house, you have your tiny little picket fence, which I did show you earlier as well. And it's a small little section, but it's very easy to line up. If you just cut a lot of them, each time you add a next one on, you just overlap that first post on them, and then you can make it continuous around the house. And I actually found going around the corners, it looks really neat if you fold right down that centerpiece and stick it round the corner like that. It gives a really nice effect doing that. So that's the little picket fence. Then going back to it being a beehive, we have got these two little dies here that allow you to cut out your outline for your bee, which you could definitely just use by itself. You can just have the outline, but we all know that bees are black and yellow, so you can cut this from black if you want to, and then you can cut this piece from yellow and stick it behind the body, so all of those little three pieces on the body that fall out would then be yellow from underneath. But actually how I did mine, I was doing them in a different colourway, so I wasn't using yellow for this, I was using pink and red, but on the actual bee itself I cut it from white And then I coloured the antennae, the head and the body in black using the fine tip of a black alcohol pen, one of the Nuvo ones. But I left the trail and the wings in white just to make it look a little bit more like a bee. So you can do either way, whichever way you want to do it. You can easily colour in those little elements as well. So I love that they've got that little body to go with them, because it just makes it so much easier. In the past you'd have to like stick that to a tiny bit of yellow card and then like trim around it, but now you've got that little piece to cut it out. So really simple to do. Then we've also got the foot. So you need to cut 4 of these to go on to the bottom of the beehive or the house or a windmill or a lighthouse, whatever you're turning it into. But these are the little feet. So these are the little glue tabs on the corners, and you literally just fold everything up, stick the glue tab to the other side, and then you've just got this gorgeous like little tiny square plinth, and you actually stick them on by the square base. So if you turn the box upside down, the feet will look hollow, but from the front you will see like the little side pieces of the feet down here. So that's the little foot for the whatever building you're creating. I slightly touched on this earlier, but you've got this little scalloped piece. This would be really nice for turning it into a gingerbread house at Christmas time as well. You often see like scallopy pieces like this on a gingerbread house. You could possibly use it on the roof, however it's not quite long enough, so you might have to do quite a lot of die cutting to cut these pieces to go across the roof to do that kind of effect. But I think it's great for any time you want to hide something, or just to add a pretty edge to things as well. These pieces that create that kind of little lip or extra lid for each of the different tiers, it would fit really nicely along there as well. And you can just cut whatever extra you need and then fold it around the corner if you want to add all of these onto your little box. So you've got that gorgeous little scalloped piece. You do also have a triangular mat and layer for the apex of the roof as well. So if you want to bring in a different colour, or maybe you've just been using patterned papers and you want that little solid panel to go on the apex of the roof, you've got that as well. So you don't have to figure out how to cut a triangle that's going to work inside there, which is nice. And then finally, there is one more die that goes with the smallest solid side patterned panel, and you can cut them together, and it says be happy. So you have got one sentiment in this die set, and you can do be happy, which goes perfectly with the beehive. And it looks really lovely, either cut like this and stuck on as a panel, or here they've put it on the roof. And I actually used it as a sentiment on my card as well. So for my tutorial video to go along with this up close video, the tutorial will be up tomorrow, I actually decided to take the 3 isosceles trapeziums from the different solid sides and show you how to create 5 different cards just using these solid trapezium shapes. And then you can definitely like bring in embossing folders to add texture to them. You can stamp on them, you can use all sorts of different scraps that you have. You could use the decorative panels onto them if you want to as well. But I just thought it'd be quite a nice way of showing you some pattern building using a trapezium, because we rarely ever get like trapezium kind of shapes within die sets. It's usually like a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, you know, that kind of thing. You don't usually get a trapezium, so I just thought it was quite a nice different idea. So that's what the tutorial will be, and Past Me will show you those cards later on as well. So I will pass you over to Past Me to show you the windmill and those cards that I created. So this is my sample that I've created, and as you can see I turned it into a windmill because as I was looking at the pictures on the packaging, the beehive looks absolutely gorgeous, and you can also turn it into a house as well. And then I was thinking, well, what other building kind of tapers up towards the top, has a kind of roof, and you know, could have like doors and windows on it as well. And at first I thought a lighthouse, but then I thought, well, it's only 3 stories high, so like red, white, red is not maybe as impressive as a proper lighthouse kind of die set that might go up like more layers. So I thought, well, why not try and turn it into a windmill? And then I was looking at the dies in the set and I thought, well, there's the perfect die in the set to create some sails for the windmill as well. So I've actually used the bottom portion of the box to create the sail. So you have the dies in here, these ones here, that give you the side panels, so the longest side of the box for that bottom tier, this is the die that I've used to create the sail because, one, I thought bigger sails is kind of better because it makes it look a little bit more kind of like impressive, or a lot of the time with windmills, you see that they would kind of like come down and probably like hit or go in front of where the front door is. But also I liked the panel the best for that one. So I wasn't sure that bees were going to be suitable for the windmill sails, and I thought this one's a little bit too small. So this one ended up being the perfect size to create the sails for the windmill. I did attach it with a split pin in the lid, so technically you probably could make this spin. However, I think I attached my roof a little bit too far out, and I don't think the hole that I've created is like freely spinning enough to make the actual split pin spin. But if I'd left myself a little bit more time, I probably could have fiddled with that and got it to be a working mechanism. But I do quite like it just being static as well, so whichever way you kind of do it, you can definitely adapt it. Inside the lid of the windmill or the beehive, I have actually put a couple of 5p's in the back of it just to make it a little bit heavier, and I've also put an extra piece of card in the front here, just raising it up a little bit because I feel like the weight of the sails that I've put on there was making the roof tip forwards, which is why I put the weight in the back of it of the 5p's. But then because the way I'd stuck the 5p's in and the size of a 5p, it was then like lifting the back of the roof up a little bit more, so it was kind of tipping forwards even more. So I put that little bit of card in the front, and it's just helped to properly make sure that that roof stays up level. And the way I have created the sails is I cut 8 of these pieces, which is actually the side piece of the box. So I cut 8 of those. One of them I kept almost all intact, well 4 of them, but 1 for each of the sails I kept almost all intact. I just chopped down here to get rid of that little glue tab. Then these 2 glue tabs here, I folded over and stuck them onto the back of the piece, and then this is the panel or the glue tab that I used to join the sails to my kebab skewers. So I had 2 kebab skewers like this. And then how I did this is I had it all laid out on my desk, and to begin with I had 2 kebab skewers and I put them at 90 degrees to each other, and I actually used some washi tape to hold them into position just so everything wouldn't move around. Then I got all of my die cuts out and I positioned all of the sails like this, so you want them all on the right hand side or the left hand side of the kebab skewer, so they'd all be in a different quadrant when it's split up. And then to get like the rough placement of where the sails were going to be, I threaded like this glue tab underneath the kebab skewer, folded it round, and then just taped it with some sellotape. So it wasn't particularly in position, it was just being held roughly in its right position onto the actual kebab skewer. Then I was able to know exactly how long these pieces needed to be to know where to trim off the end of it, so it wasn't poking out the end of the sail. And then I could actually squirt a little bit of glue in between where this was folded around and taped to the kebab skewer. I put a little bit of extra glue in there and then used some pegs to hold it down whilst it dried. So once I'd done all that and got them all attached onto the kebab skewers and all the glue was dry, I took the second one for each of the 4 sails and I cut down the score line. So all those 3 glue tabs, I just cut them off, so you're basically just making another trapezium that is the same size as the sail, and then I use them to stick on the back of the sails, so it does look nice from the front and the back. So if it was more of like a home decor piece, it would look nice from both sides, which is, it's really lovely. And then I actually used the honeycomb panel on both sides of them as well, just in a slightly darker taupe kind of colour. And actually, I forgot to say this, when I had the kebab skewers and I'd done the temporary attachment of all of these onto there, I did actually join the 2 together by using some twine. You could definitely hot glue, like a tiny bit of hot glue between them just to hold them to begin with, but what I did was I took some fine little twine. You could definitely unravel some of your baker's twine if you'd rather use that as well. I've just got this really fine stuff, so I thought I'd use that. And I just threaded it underneath the cross of them when I had them taped onto my desk, so it made it easier. And then I literally just took a little bit of the twine, tied a knot to get the first piece sort of in position and to hold into place, and then I threaded this one back in the opposite direction and tied it as well to get the first bit going. Then if you take a length of this off, you can wrap it round going like this way then this way, and then you get this like little bound section. It doesn't stop them from like turning, they still will kind of like twist in there, but actually I think that looks quite cool because I feel like sails on a windmill, they might twist a little bit to be able to catch the wind a little bit better. But yeah, I quite like how they still twist a little bit. But that's how I attach them together there. And then to attach them to the roof of the house itself, I pushed the roof further backwards. So I presume it's supposed to have an equal lip on each side, but I pushed it so it's only about 5mm overhanging. And then I pierced a hole through that kind of triangular section on there and put a split pin through, or a brad. And then I just used a dollop of hot glue to secure this to the little brad. So that's how you could technically make it a working windmill as well. Maybe push the roof back even further, and then actually make a cleaner hole in there rather than just using your pokey tool to make a hole for the split pin. Maybe if you've got like a really heavy duty like small hole punch, you could make like a better smoother hole in there so that the split pin would actually spin around. Or maybe you've got some kind of actually I just thought of something I could have used. You know those pins that they used to be on all of the Tonic packaging? I've got one here actually, and I think I've got a backing here as well. Yes. So, you know these that used to be on the Tonic packaging? I just thought you could have made a hole in the roof there, put that through, secured it on the other side, like they kind of clip together, and then you could have stuck the sails onto this piece on the outside or this piece on the outside, whichever, and then it would spin because these actually do spin. That would have been a genius way to do it, but I only just thought of it. So if you have any of these, the circle one, it says designed with love. I've got a few other ones sitting over here as well. There is I'm a Craft Superstar, which is a star-shaped one. And there's also this one, Be Inspired. If you want to get hold of any of these, actually, they don't put them on the die packaging anymore, but something I bought the other day, I think it was the... it's either the just the stamp storage pockets that they do with a couple of sheets of acetate in, or the die storage pockets that they do. I'm pretty sure they still come with these on. So if you didn't have any of these, that would be a way of getting some of them if you wanted to do that kind of thing. But I can't believe I only just thought of that. That would have worked so perfectly for making a moving mechanism. So definitely give that a try if you have some of these. I think maybe sticking it onto this side would be better, because otherwise you might stop this from turning if you get glue on that little pip that comes through the other side. But yeah, definitely give that a go if you've got some of those, because I think that would work really well, and that would make it an actual working mechanism on there for you. So what else was I going to say? I'll just show you in more detail how the sort of windmill comes together. The actual way that these boxes work, I won't have shown this to you at the beginning of the video because I had a picture on the packaging, but it actually works like this. So you have the 3 layers and you have these little joins between them. They're actually kind of like little buckles. They sort of slip inside each other, and you have one on each side of the boxes, and these stick inside. Oh, I've hidden that one. These stick inside just like that, and you could put a panel on there to hide that too. And then you just have them hanging out the bottom, and then they will slip into the next layer down. And it just allows you to create a tiered box system, and they are 3 individual boxes. I actually did double bases on mine, so I stuck one inside and one outside. If you were thinking about it, if I had been thinking about it, you could stick the one inside and put the bottom glue tabs onto the inside one, and then before you put the other one on the bottom, you could put this extra ring or like rim in, which is what holds the box on top of the previous layer, and then you could put your other one in there, and that would hide those glue tabs there. So I do have a double base on there, but I didn't think to wait to put that one in until I had done this piece. But if you do want to do that, then that would work really well. And if your base is like slightly too big for fitting inside there, just take like 1 millimeter off a couple of the edges, and then it should fit in nice and snugly as well. So that is kind of like how the box is created, it has the 3 different levels. So it'd be really nice if you did homemade chocolates. You could have like a truffle, like maybe a white chocolate truffle, milk chocolate truffle and a dark chocolate truffle or something on the different layers, and it'd be like a multi-story chocolate box or something. Or you could do biscuits as well, that would work quite nicely. And how I've decorated this, I kept it really simple. I didn't go with the decorative panels because the middle panel, so this level, both pieces on that panel have the cut out bees and the debossed bee trails on them. And because I was making this a windmill, I didn't technically or like really want to go for the bee kind of theme. You definitely could make a beehive windmill, that would work really nicely as well, but I wanted to keep it more simple. So for all of my panels I actually took my embossing tool, I cut them out of satin mirror card, and I took my embossing tool. It's one of these really tiny ones. I think they're supposed to be for like nail art or something. I got mine from Poundland years ago. They've got like a cool marble pattern on them, and it works really nicely with satin mirror card. You literally just draw on it. So just draw a random like wood grain kind of pattern. All I do is do like loads of straight lines, and then when I feel like I've done a few straight lines, I'll come in and make kind of like a knot in there, either half coming off, doing a tiny little knot in there, or even making some larger knots in here as well. It just gives like a really cool wooden sort of look to it, and I thought that went quite nicely with a windmill kind of theme. And I just did that for all of the panels on all of the different levels, and then on some of the different levels I have stuck windows on, and I did decorate it a specific way around. So the door is at the front, and then I've got one window and a heart on the next level up, and then I can put those in both sides, so it's really easy to just latch those in. I say it's really easy and then I struggle, but it is really easy to put them in. So that's the first 2 layers together, and then on the top layer I do have a window on both sides of them, but they're on different sides, and I quite like this window on this side because it fits into where I've put the sails on. It kind of like, you can see it a little bit, whereas if it was on this side you'd kind of lose that extra window on the top level. So that's how you slot it back together. Really, really easy to do. I think this is a really cool box. I do really like this one. And again, really nice for your home decor kind of boxes too. So it could be more of like a trinket box or a memory keepsake kind of box that looks nice on your shelf, but you know it's got some like little bits of memorabilia, maybe a collection of like pin badges or stamps or all sorts of different things that you might have collected. Buttons, maybe you've got loads of vintage buttons and you don't necessarily need to see them, but you could sort them into like different categories inside a little box like this and then just have it on your shelf. And I think whatever thing you turn it into, whether you do it as a beehive, or you turn it into a little house, or you go with a windmill, I think whatever way you decide to do it, it's going to look really lovely. So that is the base piece, and then this acts as the lid portion of this. And for my roof, I actually cut 2 of them. The bottom one is just white card and the top one is white pearl card, and then I curved the edges of it, and I just stuck it with a bit of foam tape down the 2 central sections here, and then I just folded up the chimney and put that on the top as well, because I feel like a windmill is more like a house, so it would have a chimney on top of it as well. I love that they've included that so that you can turn it into a house too. And there has been multiple die sets that have some kind of like house feature to them, or they have like little flower pots with flowers in, or little bits of grass, or different kind of windows that you might want to put onto some kind of building, or little bits of foliage and stuff as well, that you, if you have a lot of those ones, you can definitely bring them in to decorate this even more. Maybe put some ivy designs up there. You could turn it into more of a seasonal kind of thing. You could have like a haunted windmill if you turned it into a windmill, or you could do more of like a Christmas one. You could have a summery one with some sunflowers growing up the side of it. All sorts of different ways that you can just run with this idea. I'm sure there are more things that you can turn this into as well. The lighthouse and the windmill were just the 2 that popped into my mind, but I'm sure there are other ways of turning this into different buildings too, which I think would be fantastic. But the lid portion is literally just like an apexed roof, and then you can just put this straight on the top of the box, and then you have your finished little windmill. I really love how that turned out. I was hoping it would work as well as I was imagining in my head, but I'm really glad it did turn out really nicely. And I do love that wood panelling. Or if you don't like how you draw wood grain, or you don't think that you could draw wood grain, you can also get textured cardstocks that have like a wood grain finish to them. I don't think Tonic do a cardstock, but they do a cotton handmade paper that's brown. I think it's actually, yes, whoever's made the sample on the packaging, I just have this print out of the packaging, but whoever's made this sample has used the wood grain paper, the cotton handmade paper that came out in the Woodland Walk colour trend a couple of years back. I mean, you probably could use your mousses on it to turn it silver if you would rather do that. But I think give this technique a go if you've never tried it before. It's really fun to do, actually. It's quite relaxing just to make these little patterns in there. And I did find, I do find it's much easier if you already adhere your panel onto the side of whatever you're doing before, and obviously do this before you assemble it as well. But if you've already stuck the panel down, it's not going to you're not going to chase it all around your desk. It's going to be much easier to do. And actually, I was saying in my tutorial video, which will be up tomorrow, I was actually using one of the Nuvo tape pens to stick all my panels on. I don't know if any of you got hold of them, but they were on offer recently, so I stocked up on quite a few of these. I really enjoy the dotty one for like holding things down while I'm colouring them and stuff, but this one was fantastic for sticking these on, because when you're using mirror card, not so much with satin mirror card, but if this had been regular glossy mirror card, I would normally, to stick a panel on, would probably use wet glue, but if you do that with a mirror card, you risk the moisture of the glue seeping through, and then you can kind of see it on the shiny mirror surface of the cardstock. So if you're ever worried about that and you're too lazy, like I was, to put double-sided tape on the back of all of them, the tape runner is fantastic for sticking panels onto your boxes as well, especially if they're the solid panels too. So that is my windmill, which is kind of like my interpretation of this die set and a different kind of way of using the die set and turning it into a different building. But I've also done my tutorial video, and instead of doing a construction or showing you how I created any parts of this, I decided to do 5 ways of using an isosceles trapezium to create patterns for your cards. So in the die set, for these side panels, these longer side panels here, you have 3 different trapeziums. They're all the same height and they've all got the same angle on them, but they're just different lengths. So you can actually use them to create cool patterns for your cards. So for this first one, I went for a random kind of layout. We sort of discovered this in the tutorial. This wasn't my original plan for this. I showed a few different designs that you could do with these ones for this card, but in the end I quite liked this kind of style. It's kind of reminding me of like pickup sticks, where they're kind of, you've got to take one stick off first before you can take the next stick off. I did actually butt them all up against each other, other than this pink one. The pink one is slightly overlapping that blue because I wanted it to be closer into the card, but all of the other ones are butted up against each other, and it's quite nice having that quirky angle of the trapezium to make you line things up more differently. It's not all right angles, so it's a lovely different kind of look for a card. And I was saying in the tutorial video as well, these would make fantastic masculine cards as well. If you struggle with that kind of thing, just using block shapes and putting them together in a different fashion is really great for masculine cards, or just for using up all of your scraps as well. You can definitely, these could be patterned papers, just random offcuts from specialty papers and stuff that you have. They could be all of the papers from a colour trend. They can be jelly printed papers, maybe even things that you've coloured in and you didn't particularly like how they came out, but part of it still looks alright. You could cut those bits out as well. So all sorts of things you could use for this, but I just wanted to give you 5 ideas of how you could use these trapezium shapes to create patterns. So the first one is this. And I've actually used the Be Happy sentiment from the die set, and also the bees to go along with that as well. And all of the stamped sentiments on all of these cards, I used one on all 5 of them, is one of the Simply Sentiments A6 stamp set. They're all from that stamp set. So I will link that below, as well as the showcase as well if you're interested. Then I did this one where I stuck all of the trapeziums together at the same point, so it made a cool fanned out kind of shape, and we didn't complete it. You could have brought another 3 or 4 more die cuts around and completed the circle, but I quite liked that missing portion, and I used the sentiment to kind of cover anything that I thought looked a little bit awkward, and I showed how you could have put it in different positions as well. But actually, looking at that, it kind of makes me think of like a nautilus shell. It kind of goes around a bit like a shell. You could imagine it getting smaller into a spiral. You know, you could definitely do that if you wanted to. You could trim down your trapeziums, make them smaller, and make it come back around on itself into a spiral kind of shape as well. But this one was just using the smallest trapeziums and the 3 different colours to create that kind of a look. And you can see how that would work perfectly as a masculine card as well. Then I've done this one, so simple this one, just picked 5 different colours, cut one large trapezium from each of them. This is the largest one that's in there. Funnily enough, I've butted them all up against the bottom of this card, but it's like an optical illusion because this one looks taller than that one, but it's not. They're all exactly the same, but it's kind of giving you that optical illusion as well. Again, a lovely masculine kind of card. Or you could even cut them in black and white, maybe have white ones in the background, bring some black ones into the foreground and make it kind of look like a quirky piano for someone who plays the piano as well. And I also showed how you could turn this around in different directions and put your sentiment in different places, and this one I also stuck with different levels of foam tape. So the middle one is a 2mm, these 2 are 1mm, and then the outside 2 are stuck flat to make it look a little bit different as well. So that's that one. Then this one is actually using the trapezium kind of shapes as they are, because they actually stack on top of each other to make the different tiers. They are obviously slightly different lengths to each other, and you can make use of that when you're placing them on your card as well. So I just did the largest, the medium, the smallest, and then I went the smallest, the medium. You could definitely put the largest on there as well, especially if you were making more of like a 5x7 card. But I do quite like the odd numbers, and 5 just works really nicely. Or if you were doing a DL card, you could make it go, you know, these 5, the largest, then back to another largest the other way up, and then medium, small, to go all the way up a DL card as well to make a different kind of look. Then I used one of these cool large sentiments from Tonic. They came out in a set of 3. They're called Foliage frames and Inspiring Sentiments, and this one is the hexagon die set. And there was a couple of other ones as well, but I felt like the hexagon one went better. It was a more bolder kind of font to go with this, and I also teamed it up with one of the sentiments from that stamp set as well. And then this is the final card that I did, kind of using them as if they were sort of like building blocks or planks of wood to create a design, and I think this just gives such a lovely effect, something a little bit different than just using rectangles of cardstock. I know it does take a little bit of time to die cut shapes, but if you are creating one of the beehives for yourself, you only need to cut these specific panels twice to create a beehive. So whilst you're cutting all of the other bits and pieces, you could throw a few more of these on in some random colours, and then you'd have everything you need to die cut or to assemble your beehive, plus you'd have extra pieces that could make a coordinating card to go with it, you know, in similar colours, or you could make a lovely kind of masculine design as an extra card for your stash, and you haven't done much extra die cutting to create it as well. And you can always print screen any of these, or like pause the video and take a screenshot of them, so you can count exactly how many of what colour I've used on them. And I do go through this one, I stick this one down as well in the tutorial video, so you can see exactly what my thought process was behind it. And I decided to put a couple of strips of glitter on here as well. So I hope you enjoyed this up-close video looking at Tonic Showcase number 34, which is the Buzzing Beehive House. And I hope you enjoyed having 5 ideas of how to just use that isosceles trapezium kind of shape to create some different patterns for your card. And then I hope you enjoyed the idea of turning it into a windmill as well, or like hearing the thought process of how I sort of created the sail kind of feature on here. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in getting hold of this month's showcase, there will be affiliate links in the description box below the video, and I'll link to all these colours of card that I've used as well. But do definitely use up all of your scraps that you have. I did fish all of these out of my scrap box, but I mean, I know my scrap box is probably different to other people's scrap boxes, because sometimes whole pieces of card end up in the scrap box because I'm just clearing off my desk. But yeah, all sorts of different bits and pieces you can use to create all of these. You could even use your scraps to decorate your beehive or your windmill as well, and have a funky coloured one with all sorts of different scraps or patterned papers and stuff too. So yeah, really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next one. Bye!